Welcome to On the Entrepreneur's Journey, the show where we explore how founders and leaders build companies that scale, evolve, and ultimately run without them to create freedom, growth, and lasting value. Today, I'm joined by Jason Cohen, CEO of Northeast Group Holdings, a group of companies that supplies the professional building trades, architects, and home improvement industry with quality products and services. Jason's path to this role is anything but typical. He describes it as Wall Street to Walmart to the wood market. But what makes his story compelling is what happened next. Stepping into a business under real pressure, stabilizing it, and then repositioning it from a traditional commodity model into a more differentiated, design-driven company. In this conversation, we'll talk about what it took to turn around and scale a business, how to manage complexity across multiple operations, and how Jason is building for the next phase of growth. So Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. It's great to be here.
Good, good. I loved your W's, Wall Street, Walmart, wood market. So walk us through that path and what did you learn? Because you had these great, positions in each of the industries you're in, and how did that inform or influence how you lead today?
Sure. Well, we all know everything needs to be branded now, so that's how I branded my own journey. And eventually, maybe I'll write an autobiography titled such.
Yeah.
But I would say that the Wall Street to Walmart to Wood kind of phases of my life created a pretty incredible perspective. I left each of those phases, which I think are somewhat self-explanatory, and I'm still in the third phase with a pretty significant takeaway that I've carried with me throughout the time and every day. My time at Wall Street was somewhat tumultuous. And I would say during that time, it taught me what true resilience was. I had not experienced that previously.
And this
It was
just to frame it, this is during, the '08,
That's
meltdown,
right.
right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was laid off in '08. I'd worked for a
Hmm.
bank. Another bank purchased us, or we purchased that bank, and then I actually sat next to my replacement for quite some time before they finally put the nail in the coffin. Left the bank that day, called my dad, and he let me know that I have two choices. I can either find a job or I can join the military, because I was not bleeping moving home. So that was a moment in time that was a bit of an eye opener. And
Yeah.
I ended up taking quite a significant pay cut and to find an opportunity to kind of keep me in the city, and keep me in my apartment. But it was a good decision. It was honestly, it was a blessing in disguise to have been laid off. It was a very tumultuous beginning of my career.
Hmm.
But through that time, I kind of moved my way through the Wall Street community and worked my way back to where I wanted to be, but only to find out 7 years into it that I really was not a fan and I needed to make a change. I ended up moving to Texas, went back to business school to University of Texas, which is the best decision I ever made. And from there, I went to Walmart.
Hmm.
And at my time at Walmart was invaluable. But I would tell you that the one thing I kind of left with there that I now practice as one of our fundamentals is leaving your ego at the door. When you walk into the Walmart ecosystem, you're immediately greeted by Sam Walton and the history of Walmart. And the context that that company carries every day around their history, who they are, what they're not, is pretty essential to how you are supposed to survive and excel there. And I will tell you that I learned that through some very constructive feedback, that the guy from New York that is a little bit outspoken is not going to get what he wants here. Uh,
Hmm.
so I had to learn patience. I had to, like I said, leave my ego aside. And it once I kind of adopted that, it became a pretty incredible place to work. But that being said, I was called back to the Northeast. I did not intend necessarily to get into the family business, or the family business at the time. Um, but my dad and his partner needed support. 2 years prior, to me getting into the company, there was a massive fire at one of our lumber yards that sent them into somewhat of a financial downward spiral. And they needed leadership support. It was either going to be me or it was going to be somebody else. So my wife and I moved back to the Northeast. And in that moment, it was incredibly eye-opening. But I would tell you over the last, I've now been in the company 9 years, and I have learned how to play the metaphorical chess board. That's been
Mm.
something that I did not have that muscle day one, but I have built that muscle the last 9 years. And whether it's playing chess as it relates to people, or playing chess as it relates to acquisition, or strategic decisions, um, it has been. I always go about my work day thinking about the various moves that I need to make, and what, as a result of those moves, what's going to fall,
You
and
know,
what's going to happen. So
that's very interesting because so many people that go from large corporate, which, a bank is, certainly Walmart is, where the machine is, been so proven that you really, you have to subsume your, a lot of your personality and just really contribute to what is an incredibly successful machine that Walmart is. And then you step in to an entrepreneurial situation where you have to become the person on top and actually making the moves. It's that muscle, as you said, is not really developed in those big institutions. You're really a cog in a greater sort of strategy that's got momentum, and here it's just a totally different game, right? And so many people can't make that transition. So I laud you for being able to do that, and not, and just, I guess it's a matter of survival. The options are, failure's not an option, right? So,
sure. I mean, honestly, in hindsight, I struggled at Walmart because of the bureaucracy.
right,
And I didn't know what I didn't know. So the minute I got an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, I was able to capitalize on it, because I do think I have a knack for being able to play the chessboard. And I think
Mhm.
in my time in Fortune 500 over a 12-year period, I wanted to do that. I just didn't realize how much I do, and now, and very much enjoy enjoy the process. And we
Right.
have another fundamental in the company: own it and enjoy the ride. And it's taken me a minute to figure that one out, but I would tell you that right now I'm in a moment where I am very much thriving and enjoying kind of that constant battle.
Right. And let's put it in more context, which is you came in when you took the helm. The company was doing, say, call it 29 million. You're up towards in the mid 60s now during your leadership. So what were the key decisions that led to the turnaround? You're coming off, the fire. There's a big, hole in your balance sheet. You're fighting with the insurance companies to get
Yeah.
compensated. Liquidity's tight. So what were the key decisions that, drove the turnaround, and, what was luck and what was, sort of great decisions and execution?
I would tell you there was a lot happening at once. There was a lot happening at once. It was, you open the hood, it was definitely smoking, and
Yeah.
potentially burning. And but the first thing that was really incredible is that my dad and his partner, who I eventually have taken the business over from, gave me the keys. They gave me full agency, full autonomy. They said, it's going to be you, and you're going to live or die by your own decisions. And they were there, along for the ride for the first couple of years. My dad is now my CFO, and works alongside me. But they did not stand in my way, which is something that not a lot of entrepreneurs in businesses with family members, or they're coming in to fix. They don't always have that agency, so that helped.
Yeah. And they were
Um,
the founders. So
yeah,
yeah.
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 The second thing was, I would say I focused on three key areas. First was, like, divest ourselves of unnecessary things. So we owned a hardware store in New Jersey that we eventually moved out of, created some liquidity to reinvest in the company. The second was, we had to create revenue stability. So we didn't actually necessarily grow for the first couple of years, but we didn't lose. So we had to retain a significant client base that was honestly feeling very lukewarm about Northeast at the time.
Right.
And third was, I had to focus on the leadership team, which was very lackluster in that moment. And honestly, I was reflecting on this ahead of our discussion, and I would tell you that it's taken me a really long time to figure out the leadership team. And it's an incredible place right now, better than it's ever been. But the reason I was able to kind of figure it out and start that process when I first came in is because I had people working in the trenches that still work for me today that were incredibly reliable, like beyond reliable. Um, and those people I didn't actually have to worry about. And there was a few of them across each location. They probably know who they are. They still work for us. They've been awarded certain things and recognized. And I would tell you that as a result of them, I could focus on the top level management, which they were probably watching from afar. And I would tell you it was not a smooth ride for the first couple of years. There was a lot of change immediately, and they all endured it, and they endured it without any issues. So it was they were very much a part of that stability mechanism that we kind of had to put into place from the second I kind of came into the company. So those
That's
were the things that I was really focused on.
Yeah, so build some liquidity and get the right people. I always say this, especially when I'm coaching in a situation where we have a new CEO, new COO. You don't just inherit the business, you inherit the team,
Yeah,
and and with the good, for better or for worse, and you
yeah,
decide, and then you really have to say, where are the problems in execution in making that team really work well, and it is a process. You have to understand, you have to go through and find out where things aren't working and why they're not working,
yeah,
and sometimes it is the people. We got the wrong person in the seat, or you have the right person in the wrong seat, whatever it might be. But it is a process, and it doesn't happen overnight.
yeah.
Very, very.
And you, yeah, and you asked about luck. So I would tell you that I would never put the word luck in the same sentence as the pandemic. The pandemic was a pretty wild moment in all of our lives. But as a result of the pandemic, and as a result of what was going on in New York City at the time, there was an absolute flight from New York City to the greater region. And the residential building market and commercial building market in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey outside of the boroughs has never been the same. It's been on a much better trajectory than it was previously. In 2017 and 2018, it wasn't that strong. So as a result of that move and kind of what was going on with real estate in the region, we capitalized on it. And we capitalized on it. And honestly, I would say relative to some of the companies that I know in the space, we retained all of that. So we hit a step function. We grew from 30 million to 45 million in 18 months and kept it. And honestly, that was I think about my career with the company and various phases. Phase one was the stability phase, the create liquidity phase. Phase two was the fly by the seat of your pants phase, and essentially we're in a bit of a grow or die situation, and that, and the third phase, which I'm now coming out of, was the restabilize, which because we grew, we did not create the infrastructure we needed. The infrastructure then had to catch up at a later date, and that honestly got expensive. So we were growing, very profitable, everything was great. Then if the infrastructure catches up, expenses are rising. We're now hitting a reset moment on that, and so it's strange how the kind of pandemic, kind of sat within my career, but it definitely changed things, and it did. As a result of what was going on regionally, we were able to kind of evolve the company and get it to where it needed to be. And it turned out to be very prosperous.
Yeah. And just to reinforce that, you grow fast and you are very profitable, but you're relying on the heroics of the team, and
That's right.
the
Yeah.
infrastructure is not, providing that floor underneath, and then you get to the higher level and you just have to build the floor before you
Yeah.
fall. And that involves investment. So I've seen that often, and I think it's great when companies recognize that, yes, we need to consolidate and put a floor in under our higher revenue level. And it sounds like that's something you do. But let's turn to the strategy side of things, because you also changed the business. I mean, you
Yeah.
went from, kind of five sort of disparate businesses. I think you said beating to their own drum, and commodity business, and you really became much more into a value. You moved up the value chain. Architectural services, cabinetry, things that were that were beyond the commodities and created margin for you. Talk about that differentiation and that move to move out of just the commodity-based business.
Sure. So when I took over the company, we had 5 locations, essentially all operating in a vacuum. But we operated within a few different in the building products business. And what I immediately identified was there were a lot of first mover, long standing businesses in the lumber space, right? Companies that have been in the space for 100 plus years, third, fourth generation ownership, with clients, builders that are also third, fourth generation. Taking that market share is almost impossible.
Right.
So essentially, while all of those companies were zigging, I was like, I'm going to zag. So I zagged towards high risk, complicated, you know, honestly build off of some of the things my dad and his partner had purchased previously. They had bought a company that was focused on the architectural space. It was floundering when I took over the company, but I was able to kind of lean into that because the client base was something I actually could acquire. And I didn't need to acquire them for doing really crazy things, extended credit lines, dumb financing decisions.
You didn't have to lure them from your competitors.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could develop them purely through good service, good product. So we leaned into that the more complicated stuff, which has kind of carried us through to today and will carry us for the future. And in leaning into that, it opened my eyes to the luxury market. The luxury market is anti-cyclical, and it's a good market to be in. It's also geographically agnostic when you're not just selling commodities. If you're selling high-end products, you can ship them and install them anywhere, really in the country in some respects. So I heavily leaned into that, and that kind of opened my eyes to the custom cabinetry and millwork opportunities because that caters really nicely to the architectural space. So few years into that journey, we purchased a company called Crane Woodworking in Norwalk, Connecticut, that kind of expanded our custom capabilities. And and in addition to that, like while all that was going on, we operated a bunch of businesses with different brand names, but we have since consolidated the brand, honestly, and the culture. So something that my dad and his partner were not great at day one when I came into the company was kind of talking cross-functionally, having leadership meetings, engaging the team across the business. So not only did we consolidate the brand under the Northeast name, but we consolidated the team, right? We brought them in and we created cultural and engagement and leadership engagement across the entire business lines under the Northeast brand, while we were kind of going through building these various businesses. And kind of the last kind of thing to drop was building the infrastructure behind it that is somewhat scalable. So we're still working on that, but my goal is to create true economies of scale across the entire business standpoint that really leans into custom. We do custom stuff, and um, we're kind of leaning into luxury. And I would say something we're also doing that has been incredibly beneficial and profitable the last couple of years, we're leaning into the trend of multifamily. Although it is what you're selling into that space is commodity, the infrastructure to support it, the work that has to be done is complicated. So I would tell you that like the one thing that kind of ties all these things together is custom solutions with working with individuals in my company that are very technical. They're experts in what they do. So that's something that's going to kind of drive us for the next 5, 10 years.
So the common vision, which sews all these disparate, but they're related businesses together, is just really solving complexity in the building space, and whether that manifests in architecture, commodity, wood itself, or the actual higher end design, it all holds together. Is that kind of, if I articulate it correctly?
Yeah, actually, you basically nailed it. Our vision, the vision that we have stated for our company is to be the first choice in premium customized building solutions in the Northeast region. And I would say that my ambitions go beyond that, but I'll start with the
That's
Northeast
that's
region.
where you are.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And just to break it down a little further, the one thing I found fascinating is that, arguably the traditional commodity building supply business is probably the least attractive part for the things we're talking thin margins, working capital intensity, commodity prices, and then the competition that you mentioned earlier and the regional players. But it works in the broader strategy, and so you've kept it deliberately. Is that something that is what makes it strategically important as you look across your group of businesses?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, what makes it strategically important is the infrastructure it creates economies of scale. So the team that supports the essentially our lumber operations is also supporting every other operation. And in addition to that, the company, like the people that have worked within that operation, are now branching into other things. So I'm leaning into those people to kind of give them more opportunity in other spaces. And so those two things have really helped. I
Mhm.
would also say that I think there's a power in essentially 2 + 2 = 5. So we didn't have a really exciting brand 9 years ago in the lumber and building material space, but we've done a really good job kind of building that recognition now. And so those who purchase from us in the building material space and we create credibility there now are going to learn about us in other spaces and vice versa. So initially that client engagement wasn't there, but now it's starting to grow. And I think there's going to be um, that synergy that hasn't existed. So from both an infrastructure and operational level and client level, it's now starting to click on all cylinders.
Right, right. So getting the people, sort of attracting the people to the location allows you the opportunity to cross sell or expose them to the greater businesses that you have around that, and it's kind of like a gathering, getting people fish in a barrel, so to speak, in terms of the client side, in a way.
Yeah, you brought up the word space. So what we now are doing is thinking about our spaces much in our brick and mortar much differently than we ever have before. So we're right now in the process of building a lumberyard and retail facility in Cornwall Bridge, Connecticut, which is the lumberyard that burned a decade ago.
Hmm.
So we're finally embarking on this. And if I had built it 5 years ago, I would have built it to look like a lumberyard. If you look at it now, and actually I think it's the picture that's behind me. I can't see
Hmm.
myself on the screen, but
Right.
if you look at that, the visual of this building now, it's meant to look like an architectural building. And I want that brick and mortar and that space to scream, hey, we do high-end solutions and we service and sell commodity product. And we could do both, and you could have a really special experience
Yeah.
shopping for either with us.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the location that ideally, if we grow beyond where we are today and we're acquiring new lumber yards and new spaces, I'm going to be leaning into the space to be something that kind of represents the brand in a completely different way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a differentiation point versus a conventional lumber yard, and it does create that differentiation and positioning that, that's your zig or your zag, whatever, whichever
Yeah,
it was.
it's right. Yeah. It
So,
could be one or the other
yeah,
at
well,
any
yes,
point. Yeah.
right, right. So let's move forward. I mean, I think this is a great, evolution of a business. And as you look out over the next 3 years, what are you really building towards? What do you want your employees, customers, and business partners to understand about where the company is headed?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you that I very much would love to know how my team feels right now. I would tell you I've definitely put them through the ringer the last few years. We are ever changing,
Hmm.
and um, I think those who have evolved with us and adapted and been incredibly resilient, um, despite having challenges, really see a bright future ahead of them. And honestly,
Hmm.
very much excites me to create that for them. Um, I have shared with our leadership team and some of our key stakeholders that I intend to grow the business to 100 plus million, but I want to do it in a very sustainable, highly profitable way. I wanted to do it based on the things that have driven us the last few years that we're leaning into: customized solutions, whether it's within the architectural space, whether it's in the cabinetry and millwork space, or whether it's in the commercial space where it's a complicated engagement that needs to take place. We were 100% leaning into high risk sales. And for instance, we're standing up a new business entity called PLS Masters. PLS Masters will be our installation and turnkey division. So we've been dabbling the last couple of years in doing more vertically integrated labor. And now we're going to kind of build that and brand that separately and essentially establish a team and infrastructure around it and reposition a few people that currently work for us. So we're going to be going to market in a way that is somewhat unique to the lumberyard space or the window and door space or the cabinetry and millwork space, right? If you look at any one of those individual companies that could be a competitor of ours, they're entirely focused on the one lane. I am trying to be more than a portfolio company, right? There's plenty of portfolio companies out there in our space that have bought a bunch of different assets and essentially attempted to bring them together and build cultural norms and economies of scale. I feel I'm actually doing that.
Mm.
And I think people are super excited about that, whether you work for us or you do business with us. And I'm leaning into that narrative. I really am. So I would tell you that there's two things I am completely relentless about. One is getting the right butts in the right seats.
Hmm.
Um, so if you work for me and you've experienced this company the last few years, you have potentially been repositioned.
Hmm.
And that's a function of a philosophy that I believe in, which is everyone needs agency. The company has their needs and everyone has a specific skill set. And if you can align those three things, which is essentially the Daniel Pink philosophy, you
Hmm.
have a
Hmm.
you have a winner.
Hmm.
And I'm 100% dedicated to that.
Yeah.
And the second thing is I'm really focused at a high level on client relationship management, developing our existing relationships, developing new relationships, spreading the gospel, honestly, on behalf of the sales team. So we have 20 plus sales members of our 100 plus staff, and I am out there with them every step of the way. And I do think they know that, but it's very genuine. It's very genuine. Like I'm doing it because I love it, and I want them all to be incredibly successful. Their success essentially is my success.
Mm.
So I am pounding the pavement. So and I don't intend to stop that. I just would love to give myself more time to do more of it. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
what I'm working on right now.
it's a testament to your leadership team that you can step back and get out of the operation so that you can do that, sort of thing that you're uniquely motivated to do and love to do,
Yeah,
and also can build the brand most quickly, and that's really CEO level, activities that you've freed yourself up to do, which is great. But I want to pick up on what you said about, I mean, it sounds like what you're describing with that is on the high end is becoming actually a sub to a general contractor in terms of going in and actually building and putting in and installing your product in the projects. Am I reading that right in terms of where the business is evolving? Is that what it is?
100%. Yeah, what's
Okay.
happening definitely in the luxury market is projects are becoming more complicated. The
Yeah.
product selection is becoming more foreign to the building community. I'm importing products from Europe on a daily
Right.
basis.
Right.
We're talking about window and door openings that are 15 feet high by 8, 10 feet wide. These are
Mm.
things that the average builder is not used to using. And
Hmm.
as a result of that, it carries significant risk. So I'm de-risking them.
I
And
see.
by doing that, it creates a relationship. They can lean into my service, and it's sticky. It's pretty sticky. So if you succeed on one and you show your skill set on an opportunity, you are absolutely one of the bidders on the next opportunity.
Okay. Okay.
It's just not selling lumber, right? There's one literally. 10 or 12 companies within spitting distance of where I'm currently sitting that could sell you a 2x4,
Yeah.
including Home Depot and Lowe's, and now including QXO. So
Yeah.
I have to play in a different space. And
Yeah.
what's been cool is the team who has been historically selling lumber and building materials, and there's a few guys and gals that have been doing that for a long time that work for me, and they're leaning in to
Yeah.
some of that. They're telling some of that story,
Yeah.
and it's I think it's making their businesses better for it.
Yeah. Well, that's just another differentiation point, another sort of thing that builds your moat
Yeah,
around your company.
yeah,
Well, that's great. Well, Jason, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, and I love the evolution. And I see you coming in, and literally the place is on fire. It is,
yes, yeah,
and you stabilized it, and did the great thing. You improved your people. You actually got the liquidity you needed, and then we're very thoughtful on creating as you say, you zagged where everybody zigged and created a differentiated product that's enabling you to grow. And I think moving into the subspace and installing and stuff is going to be really interesting to watch, because I think there are a few people that cross over that boundary, and we'll see what happens. So anyway, very good lessons for people coming in and taking over a business, and I appreciate it. So until next time, we will see you on the entrepreneur's journey. Thanks very much, Jason.
thank you, Peter. It was great.